Right, hello. This is a commentary rather than a part of the standard Sisyphus Complex Solution, because that's more of a process and you'll need to look into that for anybody that's not familiar. This is a standalone commentary and one that I've been intending to do for a couple of weeks, so some of the data that I've got that I'll be running through initially, and that is a few weeks old, but I can update it verbally as we're going through. Doing this now because it's relevant, based on the latest lunacy that's about to kick off again, all to do with the Ponzi China virus, and I'm doing this at an unusual time of day for me as well, which means I don't get to have a drink, which is never a good thing, but oh well, let's crack on. So what I want to do first and foremost is give a little bit of data in terms of how any of this should realistically be justified in terms of the case fatality rate, because when something is being presented as though the world is about to end and everybody's going to die in that, then generally speaking you'd expect it to have a rather significant case fatality rate, and I'm going to demonstrate how that is not the case. More substantial information, and there's going to be a whole range of different information that I'm going to put in the links to the description links, or links to description, whatever the fuck you call it, I can't remember. Anyway, there'll be various links put in the description for you to have a look at, except for some of the data that I'm producing myself. There you'll just have to take screenshots or whatever, and I'll just get in touch and ask if you want something. So anyway, let's take this forward. The first thing I want to move into is, this is going back to the data, like I said, I meant to do this a few weeks ago, and this is data from the ONS up to September the 25th. And the key things that I wanted to point out here is how, when we're in a situation of needing to be very, very clear as to what is going on, and it's fairly obvious that Sage don't seem to know what the hell they're talking about, you need to understand whether the data that's being produced is accurate or not. So what I can demonstrate from this, where I've got the two question marks, these are both the overall figures from the exact same data sheets that came out on September the 25th from the ONS. I've been bringing them out, I've been downloading them. You do it once every Friday. Again, the links are in there, so you can do it yourself and check if you want. Whereas on one sheet it will give you the total there, where it's got the 52,271, and yet on another one of the sheets within the same folder you've got 52,856, so they can't even add up correctly themselves. Yet when you look at the numbers in terms of the accumulated daily deaths and accumulated cases and so forth, but it's the deaths that I want to concentrate on particular. On September the 21st there were 41,788, and then when I'd taken it again on October the 9th it was 42,592. Now when I looked yet again on October the 16th I had data, and then again on the 30th, yeah, I took the data as well on the 30th, so I'm all over the place. We're still not anywhere near the figures that are being suggested here. So on October the 30th, and the total reported deaths were 45,955. So I know that there seems to be this continuing confusion as to what the hospitals have been saying, and then what the deaths inside of care homes, and that kind of disparity. But after this length of time you'd expect these people to have had a bloody clue what they're doing by now, and get figures to line up, and they never ever do. And like I say, the biggest problem is that they don't line up inside the ONS information itself. Download it, check the sheets for yourselves. So what we're dealing with here, and that is some pretty bloody incompetent people, and they're making their decisions based off of incompetence. So that's the first part to it. The second part of a bit of information that I wanted to go through is anybody that saw the video that I last produced, and that called Allodoxophobia, you'll remember that I pointed out how, when you look at the numbers across the world, how is it exactly that China have not reported a single death since the 18th of May? And considering that's where it came from, and the number of cases that they've had, between the difference between the 18th of May and the 30th of October, their numbers of cases have increased by 2,986 with not a single death. So something's wrong there as well. Obviously the immediate thing that people will say is, well, the Chinese have got to be lying. Well, who is lying really? I do wonder, because right from the get-go none of this has ever made any sense. I'll also be putting a link in the description that's around about the fact that, if you remember back to July 3rd, the BBC report, there was 30,000 excess deaths in care homes. Well, subsequent to that, there have been reports out there that care homes have been offered double the money to take in the elderly. And if you pay attention to some of the information that's out there, particularly into some interviews that were done via the Keep Britain Free site. Like I say, I'll put the link up for Keep Britain Free within there, and then you just find the video yourself. A lot of these care homes and that are literally just putting DNRs on them, putting nil by mouth, and then just shutting the door behind pensioners. And it's got fuck all to do with any COVID. So, you know, how many deaths are really to do with this stuff? So I wanted to also look at a little bit of a comparison. So for all of the bedwetters that are out there, if you think about what it is you've not been concerned about in the slightest in the past, let's have a look at a bunch of the viruses that have been around for donkey's years. Now, as I said, this is data that I took going back to, in this particular instance, that's the 21st of September, I believe that one's got. All you have to do with these comparisons is to say, well, if every one of the blue columns, and that's where you've got a higher mortality rate according to that particular age group, every single one of those columns, reduce it by 1. In other words, the 5-year period, the 5-year grouping there, the risk ratio is reduced again to such an extent that it's becoming even less deadly. So within this, in terms of the because you can't really read all of the various viruses that are up there, and this is quite widely known information. If you look at all of the viruses that are up there, and it is difficult to read, so I've written them down at the bottom, and where I've coded them there and that in terms of colour is that all of the viruses that are in white, not a single one of those is less deadly. So basically, in that, all this ponzi China virus, you've got far more chance of dying from every single one of those ones that are in white. Okay, doesn't matter what age group you are. The ones that are in yellow, if you are under 30 years of age, so essentially, yeah, so like the flu is the very first one, so there we go, the very first blue column there. If you're under 30 years of age, you got nothing to worry about in comparison to your standard flu season. Then the ones in blue, those are the ones that, unless you're over 60, don't worry about it. The ones in the one single one in green is down to the varicella, the chicken pox for the little kids. This one is slightly more deadly than the chicken pox, but that's only because you've got 0 chance of a little baby dying from that. and apparently they're saying that they're claiming that there's been 7 kids within that age group up to 10 years old that have died. I'd find that one a bit dubious, but never mind. So, I mean, as you can see, it's quite easily demonstrated that we've had all these different viruses, and that a lot these viruses are still out there. I mean, you're getting all this bullshit coming out at the moment, and that's saying, well, we're going to have to learn to live with it. Well, we've learned to live with practically bloody everything. And there's no need for any of this nonsense and panic and bedwetting. So all those red areas, it's basically you've got a more chance of dying for all those ones that are in red than you have with this latest load of nonsense. So what I had done in the initial phase of doing this was divide it into men and women as well, but I'll go into that in a second. Because if you want to read what the numbers were, the percentages were on that date of the 21st, well, it's as of the 18th of October. Because keep in mind this, when you're doing the case fatality rate between those dates and now, or between those dates and the 30th of October, you'll have ended up with a lot more cases. There'd have been more deaths, but there's still a hell of a lot more cases. So the case fatality risk, or case fatality ratio, and that it drops even further. So for the 1-year-olds, it is now down to 0.0003. For 1 to 4-year-olds, 0.0001%. This is 5 to 9-year-old, 0.0001%. 10 to 14, 0.0004%. 15 to 19, 0.0012%. 20 to 24, 0.0036%. 25 to 29, 0.0069%. So for that entire age group, you're looking at an average of 0.002% risk. It's farcically low. Your 30 to 34-year-olds, 0.0123%. 35 to 39, 0.0192%. So under 40s, as an average, taking everybody up from newborn right the way up to 40 years old, 0.005% is your risk of dying, just to be absolutely clear. 40 to 44, so yeah, basically under 45, 0.0375%. 45 to 49, 0.0682%. When you get over your 50s, and that's say you're 50 to 54, so essentially my age group, there we get 0.1254%. I'm not wetting my bed at that. 55 to 59's 0.2133%. 60 to 64, 0.3043%. 65 to 69, 0.4171%. 70 to 74, 0.6883%. So under 75's your average risk, so that's everybody under 75, everybody under 75 years old, that averages out at 0.119%. Okay, so 75 to 79, 0.9949%. 80 to 84, 1.4171%. 85 to 89, 1.5149%. 90 plus, 1.6082%. So taking the over 75s to the 90 plus, just that age group, 1.384%. So you know the elderly are at the greatest risk, and it's 1.384%. As a total average across the board, you're looking at 0.37%. Now, quite often we're hearing the infection fatality rate being suggested as being 0.2%. Well, considering this is case fatality, I think that the infection, the IFR number, is going to end up being even a hell of a lot lower than 0.2%. So you literally are looking at a greater risk of practically everything, near enough everything that you do in life has got a bigger risk than this. And the one that I do constantly state is that with all of this crap of lockdown and the amount of people that are going to be losing jobs and the problems that there's going to be resulting from this, unemployment alone is 1.93%. So the people that are being made unemployed have got a greater risk of a fatality risk than the elderly of this. Okay, so it's just idiotic. What I did then was break it between the males and the females. Essentially what you can see with this one, I've not run through the numbers with it because I couldn't be asked. I wanted to get this over and done with. The key point between this one is if you have a good long look, you might need to do a little bit of backwards and forwards yourself, because I'm not going to do it. The men have a higher risk than the women. Okay, males have a higher risk than females. So if you watch where the blue line is, where the blue boxes are, reduce it by 1. Okay, so females have got less of a risk than men. All right, so again, compared to all other diseases that are out there in terms of viruses, I mean, this is not even to go into stuff that I'm sure everybody's already been turning around and explaining, that all of the appointments to check if there's cancers and that, the leukemia treatments, the bloody, oh, I don't know, it doesn't really matter, to be quite honest. I mean, fucking tetanus, the tetanus jab or whatever. Everything is providing a much greater risk than this crap. And how it is that you've got these so-called scientists within this SAGE, which I'm not convinced that there's going to be all of them and that are turning around and saying that there's anything remotely justified here. I think it is much more politically driven, but I'm not going to go into I know it's politically driven, but I'm not going to go into those sort of details on this occasion, and I'll give you a little bit of a reason as to why in a bit. But I just want you to understand, at least for the time being, in terms of viruses, this is nothing. It really is nothing. So we are faced with a situation of going into lockdown again, causing more problems again. Guaranteed it will end up having much more of a problem, because they'll do it again and again and again. Guarantee it. I'll give you one quick tip as well. For anybody out there that is thinking that you don't want to get ill at all, just in case you get paranoid and you think that even if you've just got a regular cold or just the flu or whatever. Shut up, seagulls. If you want to avoid catching any kind of ailment, one of the things to try to keep in mind is that the lack of humidity can assist with catching a cold. So, like when you go to bed at night, if you haven't got if you haven't got a humidifier, what you can do is have a bowl of hot water, or if you've got like with my bedroom, that I've got a sink in my room, just fill up the sink with some hot water, and the steam from that will make a difference to help have some humidity in the air, and that can help stave off some of the infections. So it's just a very little thing, a very simple tip, but if you really want to be that paranoid about things, just do a little thing like that. It can help. But anyway, what I do want to point out now is some of the steps that I think need to be taken, because it's quite clear that none of the MPs are going to, none of them are going to do anything to prevent the absolute devastation that they're about to continue causing. It's been bad enough as it is. I mean, as much as they're turning around and saying, well, this time it's a lockdown, and we haven't been in lockdown since whenever it finished, and that was bloody April or May, whatever it was. Essentially, in that it's been some form of continual lockdown throughout. I mean, all the nonsense about wearing masks as well, all these different things, and the social distancing and that. I mean, it literally is destroying people's lives, and going into a much further lockdown and going back into what we had that started in March. It is going to be absolutely devastating for a lot of people. So those of you out there that have got half a fucking brain, and you do understand numbers, you do understand how the science actually says that it's bullshit, you've got to think about what it is that you can actually do about it. And so I'm going to run through a bit of a plan of action that doesn't require everybody going off their fucking rocker and start running around rampaging in the streets and causing all manner of absolute havoc. Let's try some logic to begin with. So the first thing you need to do is find out who your local MP is. There'll be links in the description again in terms of how you actually find out who that is, how you can get in touch with them. The web page in particular that I'll be putting a link into, and that it gives a list of every single MP up and down the country. All you have to do, and that is find out which one is suited to you. You click on there, it will have their parliamentary email address. If you want to go further than that, which I do recommend, find out the address of where their local office is as well. And there are certain MPs that refuse to put the local party office in there. All you need to do then is, rather than looking at the web page that's dedicated to them, do another search that says your local party for that seat, and you'll find it that way. It's quite an easy thing to do. But find out how to contact them. Find out where you can send an email through to them in Parliament, that you can send letters to the office as well, and where you can actually find out from the local office when they're having surgeries. Because what you've got to be doing here, and that is making sure you're taking notes as to what kind of effect this has had on you, on your family and your friends. Don't concentrate on anything that's to do with second-hand information. Make sure it's direct information, direct impact. Okay, and then, like I said, I'll be running through more of the process as I continue, but get the base information as to who it is that you're supposed to be targeting. Because the thing about this is that, as much as this whole bullshit going through the media is, it's sending so many people absolutely bloody loopy. You've got to think, well, if they're doing that to us, let's throw a bit of shame back in their direction. Let's let them really get bombarded with the real stories from real people, the ones that they actually have to be facing in your own constituency. Okay, so get the details of who your local MP is and start writing to them. Right, so the second step to that is, when you are writing to them, make sure you've got your name, your address, so that you're showing that you are within their constituency. Otherwise, they won't respond. They'll just ignore it. It'll just go away. I mean, they'll probably end up ignoring a lot of it anyway. But do that, because then you're following the right process. Right. Again, part 2. Keep it personal to yourself. Try to turn around and think, well, what are the real difficulties that are going on? Is there you can go so far as not only people that are living within your own household and that, but if you do have elderly parents and that, if they're in care homes or anything like that, you've got to be concerned there. To be perfectly frank, and that, if I was you, and that, I'd get them the fuck out, because a lot of this stuff and that is, like I say, you're going to have to watch some of the videos and that, where some of the because anybody that won't believe what I say, you have to look at some of the videos where people are whistleblowing and how they are intentionally just completely abandoning the elderly. So if it's your bloody mum and dad or your grandma or whatever, if you do actually give a shit, you might want to be paying attention. Get all that information together and that, include it in any letter, so you've got that personal story. Okay, Go through as many actually published, stated facts as you possibly can. Like I said, this is why I tend to do the data myself, so that I can find published works. Again, I've got some resources within the links, but look for yourself as well. Get as much information as you possibly can, so you can turn around and say, how can you explain this? How do you explain that? How do you explain the other? Why is it that your graphs don't seem to match reality? Back it up as well, because you've had all of this nonsense up until now saying, oh, the WHO has said this, and therefore anything that doesn't go, anything that goes against the WHO, and that we have to ignore it all. Well, we've got, again, link in the description, you can watch the video. We've got this guy from the WHO that said specifically they don't recommend lockdowns. An awful lot of what he says after that is bollocks, but that's the key point that you want to grab a hold of. If they're saying that they don't want lockdowns, then hold them to their word. They're saying, you know, you have to listen to the WHO. They shouldn't be having lockdowns. Okay? Specific references that you can make, so they can't wiggle out of it. I mean, he turned around at one point and that said, well, what's it? He reckons that 10% of the world population have been infected by this. Therefore, that means that 90% have still yet to be infected. That just goes to show what an absolute moron this bloke is, because that's just not the way that it works at all. But again, just grab a hold of proper facts from published papers, scientific papers, as much information as you can get. Put it in there. Then I have included the paper in the links, and it's a paper that was written by this, I never know how to pronounce people's names, Pekka Martikainen. The study from 1999. That, again, proper published paper, and it says the fatality risk ratio for the unemployed is 1.93%. So it's not just figures we're plucking out of our arse. So you can turn around and say, right, if all of these people under 75 have got, what was the risk ratio for that, for the under 75s? 0.119% compared to 1.93%. I mean, it's just farcical. There's no justification, and they need to be pushed to explain these things. So that's your second step. Again, it's all fitting within communication, but you need to understand what you're supposed to be writing. Preparations, because all of the official parties are all prepared to just follow the same rhetoric. There's not one of them that's going to be saying anything different. So the time has come that when we've got parties that are not prepared to listen to the public, that are not prepared to protect the public, because what they're doing is not protecting the public, it is causing considerable damage. You need to look towards what options have you got. So you've got the Heritage Party, which is an official party now. It has gone through the process to be an official party through the Electoral Commission. They are registered. You've got Lawrence Fox, that I believe is going to be for the Reclaim Party. He's going to be registered officially in the next week or two, something like that, I think, if I remember rightly. The reason why I'm saying this is because you want to do try to get a number of different things going at the same time, so you've got that choice. And you can also turn around and say, well, right, when you write into your MP, I mean, generally speaking, that's either going to be Labour, Lib Dem, you got the one Green, obviously Conservative, that are no longer Conservative. You can turn around that and you can add something at the end and say, by the way, I know about these parties, I am now switching my allegiance to these parties. Push them on things like that, because as we're going forward, what you want to be doing to be able to put an end to a lot of this nonsense is forcing a general election. And this is a part of what the process is, and that I'm going to be showing you, so we can really start to hit back politically as well. The good thing about new parties is that you get to have a much more of a voice in terms of what their actual entire vision, I suppose, is going to be. You'll be able to have some input. You might even want to be able to stand up and be one of the councillors or an MP yourself Here's your opportunity. You're going to get a damn sight better chance of having your say through parties like this than you ever are through the established ones that are just absolutely determined to screw everybody over. Right, step 4. Get your local network going as much as you possibly can. Speak to as many people as you possibly can. If you're coming across ones that are absolute bedwetters, that are absolutely determined to repeat everything that they've just heard of at the BBC, try. If they're insistent, forget about it. Find as many people in your local area as you possibly can to see if you can all start to get some kind of a network together. Because you can start sharing information, you can start sharing stories, you can get local data. How many people are actually suffering from anything? Not only just has anybody actually been ill, because I know secondhand one person that has apparently died from this. I'm not convinced of that, and it was a nurse at the local hospital. I'm not convinced that that was the actual diagnosis, but you know, try to gather some data for your locale, so you're going to understand, is the NHS genuinely under pressure? Try to get people within the network that are working at the local hospital, people that are the police force, any of the emergency services. Try to find out as much information as you can and make notes of these things. Get everybody collecting data together so you've got a much better picture of your own locality. And then you can also then be looking towards, like, if you do manage to do something forward with the other two parties, you've got a network established already. You've got a much better proposition of being able to come up with some advice as to what your local area needs. People need to start getting together without being lunatic about things. It can be difficult sometimes, and that way you end up with lots of different voices, but just try to keep it as controlled as possible. If you come across, if you're using a Facebook site, or you're using I think there's a site called Locals or anything like that, try to get as many people as you can involved. And if somebody else has got a site that's running and doing the same thing as you, just get in touch with them and say, right, okay, we need to amalgamate this. Let's work together to make sure we've all got the right data and we all know what we're doing. Try to have people connect to one another, because that can also help you out on that. That if there is anybody out there, and if you're feeling a little bit isolated or anything like that, it can also help you with this. But the more people that you are in a network, the stronger your voice becomes, and then you can look towards having your next stage of letters going through to the MP saying, we're all now signing this together. The louder your voice becomes, the more people that there are within your network, the stronger the capabilities that you have. So develop your networks. Learning how to recall your MP. Again, it becomes a threat to take to your local MP. If they're not paying attention to what's going on, if they're not prepared to speak out, if they're not prepared to stop the nonsense, say, fine, right. If you're not prepared to do what you're supposed to do, because remember, all MPs are your employees. You're not subservient to them, it's the other way around, okay? What you need in terms of being able to get start the process of being able to recall an MP, if you can get 10% of your local population to sign a document that says, right, we don't want that MP anymore, you've got enough people to get the process going to be able to have them kicked out. And like I say, if you've managed to get something going with one of those two new parties, whatever you do, and I mean, if another party comes up and said, oh, we're now the local communist party or something, don't go near those morons. Stick to somebody that's actually got a clue what they're doing. Make the threat. Develop your network. Have a look and see how many people are within your regional area, within your constituency. How many people are of a legal age to vote? Shouldn't be difficult to figure out how many is 10%. Getting 10% is an absolute bugger, I know that. And it is hard work, but the more you try, the more you can gather. Okay? Because it's a case of, right, well, I've got this person, now I've brought on somebody else. Now ask that person to get in touch with somebody else, and then they get in touch with somebody else, and you start to spread the word. You don't have to be the one that gets in touch with everybody on your own. If you can get a decent amount of information from the electoral register, make best use of it. Okay. Not everybody is listed on the register. A lot of people opt out, but it could be something that gives you an awful lot of information. And if you can find out how to contact them, do it. Okay. Get as many people on board as possible, and then study how you recall your local MP and make that threat. Once you've started to gather more and more people together in your network, make that threat. Like I say, you get to then, you have your local MP is being hit with, here's your personal story, this is what's going wrong in your own home. Then you've got, if you're not going to prepare to do something, I'm going to abandon your party. Then if they're still not prepared to do something, right, we are now going to look towards recalling you. Keep the pressure up. Whatever you do, do not start writing a load of nonsense from people like David Icke. If you start putting in there and saying, I watched a programme from David Icke and that, and I think you're all lizard people, it's going to be a waste of time. I mean, every time anybody wants to try to do something, you have to maintain your focus. I mean, there are certain elements around this that I'm very much aware of, but I don't really mention it when I'm getting in contact with my local MP. And the reason why you don't do that is because you don't want to leave the door open for them turning around going, it's okay, we can ignore this one because it's a nutter. Stick to something that has got to be answered. Okay? Everything has to have the focus on what the real problem is right now. And the real problem is this lockdown. We can deal with any other nonsense later on. Don't be quoting people like David Icke. I'm sure, I know that he says some reasonable things, but he says some absolutely bloody mental stuff as well. So just stick to the facts, okay? Police and crime commissioners, they are also elected. If they're going to want to be elected again, they can be pressured. That's another area where you can be sending out your emails, your letters, whatever. I've put the links in there, and that you can find out who is the local police crime commissioner for your area. You can just click it, go to your area, it will give you the information. Okay, so you can turn around and say, once you've managed to get a good network of people together, they won't like it, and they certainly won't like being told this. But if you say, right, as a collective for our area, we now remove consent for anything related to this Coronavirus Act. Make sure you try to include that. I probably should have written that down there myself. But listen to this, and then it's the Coronavirus Act. It came into force from March the 25th of this year. Say you do not give consent to any laws related to the Coronavirus Act. Okay? They'll probably turn around and say, no, that's not the way it works. It doesn't matter. Still pressure them. They won't like it. Yeah, going forward, and that just said, yeah, that you're not prepared to put up with the police going around and enforcing any draconian measures. Step 7, join up with national groups as well. Because again, the more voices, the better. At the moment, you've got Keep Britain Free, which is undertaking some legal recourse, or trying to. They keep being pushed back. But join up with them. Take a look at their site. You don't have to be donating money, because I know a lot of people and that probably won't be able to in a position to do that at the moment. But at least just try to keep in touch with this. Sign up to it. Get the newsletters. Get the wider perspective of information, because you might find certain things that are going to be relevant to the next letter that you write. Because, like I say, you want to be keeping up the pressure on these people. So Keep Britain Free is a good one. Look out for any other nationwide organisations, groups, people that are actually actively trying to do something about this. Step number 8, because you have to think about everybody in the local area, and people within your local area are running your local businesses. you need to be making sure that they're going to be able to open up at the end of the day, because otherwise than that, all of the shops that you rely on are going to be gone. It's all very well and good everybody sort of going down to the local Tesco's or whatever and that, providing they're not cordoning off the Tampax and things like that again. But remember your smaller businesses. They're part of your community as well. Remember your local, even your pubs and your restaurants and all this sort of stuff. Keep in touch with them. Turn around and say to them, well, look, if we can't, for the time being, if we can't come in right now, first and foremost, can we have you on our mailing list? Can we have you as part of our network? Because they will obviously then have their own little database of their own customers that might be of use to you. Then turn around and say to them, well, look, what items can you sell that can be delivered? What items could we either phone you up and you can send it to us, or can we order online? Anything of that nature. Try to work out which of your local businesses you can actually give some assistance to, and have a look at the likes of the World Economic Forum. This is not something that you want to be putting in your letters, by the way, but have a look at the likes of the World Economic Forum, who are behind an awful lot of the crap that is going on. Don't be spending your money on their organisations. Concentrate on the people that are within your locale that matter, not these buggers. Okay? Obviously, certain businesses in the local area, and that will be franchises, and as much as they are connected to the much larger organisation, remember, franchise owners are also local people, so pay attention to that sort of stuff. The more that you can help each other, the better off you'll be as you're coming out of all of this. Like I said, especially if you can't get through the door and that, then see if they can send stuff to you. Right, this one.
Yeah, I'm just walking on Station Road now. There's three.
This is somebody else's video that I'd meant to show before.
Two in army gear.
Now,
good afternoon. How you doing, guys?
pay attention because.
What are you guys doing on the streets? If you don't mind me asking.
We had heard over the news that.
For what reason?
The military will be going around.
Can I ask you a question? I'm a citizen
They already
of
are.
Handsworth, and I live in this community. I just want to know, and I'm recording this for my safety and your safety also. Why is the need to have the army on our streets and knocking on people's doors and to see if they want to be tested?
We're just here to support the council and hand them out.
But why the army?
Just to support. That's all we're here for, just to support the council and help.
Supporting the council.
But if people want to have tests, surely that's their discretion. If they can go voluntarily to any sort of centres to have tested. So why knock on people's doors?
Just to give them the option. They don't have to take it. They can just take it if they want.
And whose directive is this?
Birmingham City Council.
Birmingham City Council. And where's Birmingham City Council got this directive from?
I'm not sure, sorry.
And also, just to say, if you do come knocking on my door and I refuse, what is there any repercussions to that?
Of course not. No, it's entirely up to yourself.
And how do you guys feel? I assume you're part of the British Army?
The Air Force.
You are, the Air Force, yeah? And how do you guys feel knocking on people's doors?
Well, I don't answer more questions, but we're just here to support, but thank you.
Yeah, but surely, I mean, you're here to, this is a democratic country that we live in, yes? And it's a free country. Do you not think this is a bit draconian in terms of what you guys are doing?
I'm not answering more questions, sorry, but we're just here to support, but thank you.
So you're only here to
Fair
support?
questions, aren't
We're
they?
here to support the
Yeah.
council, yes.
Is there any legal right that you can actually go around knocking on people's doors?
I'm not answering any more questions.
Well, it's not very good. Like I said, I'm not happy as a citizen of Handsworth, and I'm one of the residents around here. And if I do see anybody, any
I'm
people
going to
that
let
I
this
know,
run because it goes
I
on.
will
It
tell
goes on
them
for
to
about 5
refuse
minutes
to
now
knock
because
on
in a
the-
little while
open
now
the
you'll
doors,
see
because
some
I think it's
people
an
from the
absolute
council
liberty
as well.
of people's civil rights and taking away our freedoms. This is absolute tyranny. Having the army on the streets, yeah? Having the army on the streets. No, listen, I'm saying, having the army on the streets is absolute tyranny. And you guys really should be ashamed of yourselves doing this, you know that? It's absolutely disgusting. Is this what this country's come to now? Absolutely disgraceful.
And this is from a few weeks
Knocking
ago.
on people's doors to ask if they want to be tested. There's nothing wrong with people. If people want to get tested, they can go to these test centres if they want to. This is intimidation. You know
Yes.
that. Absolute tyranny. And mark my words, when we get the words out, taking orders from on high. So this is Station Road people. They're going out knocking on people's doors, asking if they want to have voluntary tests. And we don't even know what these tests are. We don't know what they're for. So
look up
please,
the data around false
I say
positives.
to the community of Handsworth, do not open your doors, and if you do open your doors, politely tell them to go away. Yeah? Away, brother. You okay, yeah? So I'm just recording these army people on the street.
I've just put the picture of them on the group chat.
Oh, have you? Okay, well listen, I've just spoken to them, I've recorded them, so we just need to get the word out to people not to open doors.
I've told everyone, I'll put it on the group chat.
Yeah, I've just seen the photos, yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. Listen, let's just see what they've got to say anyways. They haven't said much anyways. I'm not too sure, I'll ask them. Just tell them to go away. Tell them you don't want to test. This is all against the law. Coming around knocking on people's doors. How dare you taking civil liberties out of people's knocking on people's doors? Well, you shouldn't be asking people, madam, shut your door and tell them no. Right? This is a piss take. The army on the streets. You should be ashamed of yourselves. This is Britain, not fucking communist China. Just politely say no, madam. Yeah, you all need to get off the streets. All of you.
Why?
Why? Because you're taking the piss, that's why. Knocking on people's doors, it's a liberty. Don't just say no. Don't open your doors and tell them piss off. They've got no right coming around here knocking on people's doors. This is a liberty. Yeah, you all need to get off the roads, get off the streets and stop knocking on people's doors. Tell them no, love, if they come knocking on your door. Who the bloody hell do you think you are? I'm a citizen of this fucking country, that's who I am, mate. I'm a tax-paying individual. Okay. Well, yeah, you got no right going around knocking on people's doors.
What, giving a free COVID test?
Yes. If people want to have a COVID test, they can go on their own free will. We don't need people like you knocking on people's doors.
Okay.
Now do one.
Okay.
Because there'll be many more of us on the streets.
Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye. Fucking goodbye.
And there you go. So you do have the military out and about already. So it's the elderly that I'm concerned about, the people that are the elderly people and that sort of living on their own, and if they're gullible enough to be taken in by this crap and intimidated by it. So watch out for people. Make sure they're not being intimidated, because they'll only get worse if they're allowed to get away with it. So there's your step 9. Make sure you don't have to do all these things. When anybody's coming around, especially from the council, because I know what an awful lot of the councillors are like, the council workers rather. I mean, it literally is the Jobsworths. Oh, I was told to do this. Yeah, well, use your fucking brain. Say no to this stuff. You do not have to comply, and you should not comply. So there's your step 9. Finally, for the time being, because there will be more steps later on, but there's enough for you to be getting on with at the moment, you are not mental if you do go through these steps. Anybody that doesn't understand the word of allodoxophobia, it means a fear of opinions. It means a fear of what other people's opinions are of you. Do not give a damn about things like that, and grow some balls, because the more that you let people get away with this, the more liberties they will take. Alright? So that is an important part, probably the most important part. And I would also suggest that all of these people, like I say, all across the emergency services, the guys in the military and all this sort of stuff, and that, the police in particular, understand who it is that you actually represent, who it is that you actually work for, and where you get paid, how you get paid, because you probably won't get paid for much longer. If they keep on this crap, where do you think the money's going to come from for your wages? If everybody's being made unemployed, where's the money going to come from? I know you've had these people that turn and go, oh, you care more about the economy than lives. Without the economy, you don't have a life. you dumb bastards. So that's where getting a bloody clue comes in handy. Alright? You need to start paying attention to some of these processes and start actually standing up against it, because it really is massively unjustified. And that bit at the beginning where I was telling you about all of the stuff, all of the other diseases that are far worse than this, Christ's sake, you've got more risk of going to the bathroom. And I know that's possibly why so many people stay in bed and just wet it. That is a genuine fact, especially for the elderly. Something like 30% of accidents that the elderly have are when they go to the bathroom. So it's ludicrous, and you need to grow some balls, say no, and start pushing back against this nonsense. There will be other steps based on however far they want to decide to try to push us, but for the time being, you keep cool heads, you get together as much as you possibly can, you make your feelings known, you write your letters and that, and as much as I'm a bugger for this myself and that I've caught letting loose with my language, but try to keep it as polite as you can, make it as forceful as you can, but make sure that you're keeping within the realms of acceptability for the time being. Alright? Start pushing back. Start letting them have a little bit of shame over some of the stuff that I'm sure they're putting an awful lot of you through. Okay? Put those personal stories out there. I did hear from Vernon Coleman where he said that it's an idea to start writing to the media about this sort of stuff. By all means do it. Seeing as they seem to be absolutely obsessed with the panic porn at the moment, I'm not too sure how far you'll get with that. And at the end of the day, the people that are actually enforcing all of this crap are far more important than some nonce that sits in front of a camera. Says me. In terms of the BBC studios and the Channel 4 studios and where they think they're going to get their money from as well. Because especially the likes of Channel 4, I bet you didn't know that they get paid through the taxpayer, did you? It's not through the licence, it's through additional revenue, additional taxpayer money, that they get money fed through the government. So when they're pushing their panic porn and absolute determination to push an entire load of bollocks, just remember, you're paying for that. And it literally is like paying for your own demise. The last thing I will say, in terms of these people that work within the emergency services or in the councils or anywhere where you're being told to enforce all of this crap, there's a term called a useful idiot. And the useful idiot is the one that will just go along and say, oh yes, well, it's just my job. Oh, it's not me, mate. I don't make the decisions. Oh, I've just got to do what I'm told. If you think about it and how they'd be prepared to do this much damage to so many people, do you honestly think they give a flying fuck about you? Do you really think that once they've got their claws in, that you won't get it at some point? Because if you think that, then you really, really are daft. So, pay attention, start to get some data together, start to develop your networks, start some real pushback. Not just protests in London, because this is half of the problem as well. Not everybody will concentrate. Well, I mean, even the media doesn't cover the protests in London. But you can. It's not really going to be effective if you all start just sort of going, oh, where are we going to protest here and where are we going to protest there? Because I guarantee that's going to end up on a right bloody mess. If there's going to be any sort of direct action, that'll take place at a later date. Let's go with the first stage. Get the information. Hit your MPs with as much information as you've got, and say, answer this question, answer that question. Understand what you're doing to us. Make it known. Make your voices known. That's what you got them for. You don't need to be just sitting back and being a wuss. Okay? So, if you want to get in touch at all and that's all, my information will be put in there. Feel free to write anything under the video. And if there is anybody out there and that's thinking, oh, go, you're one of these ones that wants to kill grandma. No, understand this. If you are in favour of all of this crap, you're not only killing grandma, you're killing yourselves, you're killing your kids, you're destroying your kids' lives. And with the amount of debt that's going to be laden onto everybody, you're going to be killing even those that haven't even been born yet. So try growing a brain for once and stop being so fucking selfish. So best of luck. Let me know how it goes and let me know if you need any information. Okay, take care. Ta-da.